So Nate, are you still going to the Munns Park meetings?
Yeah.
And what's that, about a 6 or 8 hour drive for you?
Yeah, it's 6-ish. If I'm driving like a jerk, it's 5.5 hours.
Wow. Do you, and that's like every month, once a month, right? You make that big drive to Munns Park.
Uh-huh.
That's a lot of dedication.
Yeah. That's only because they don't have their church near me.
You wouldn't call it a church though, right? Or would you?
No. But I've heard people call it a cult, so that's pretty funny.
Yeah, a cult. You get that a lot. There's a lot of it's really interesting because the public makes these instant judgments without looking into things at all. Um, and there's a lot of psyops around too. There's a guy out now who I think he's very interesting to listen to. His name is well, I won't even mention his name. People will know who I'm talking about probably. But he's a quote unquote insider, and he's an older guy. I think he's like 90 years old, and he's been talking a lot about revealing a lot of information that our government knows about extraterrestrial life and about the technologies that are supposedly hiding from us. Recent, one of his recent shows with Jeff Rentz, he talked about quickly, in passing, very quickly, how the Meier contacts with Semyase were really discussions with Maria Orsic. Have you ever heard of her, Nathan?
No.
Okay. Well, this is a bit of a tangent, excuse me. Maria Orsic is very interesting. She was a lady in the Vril Society in the late 1920s. And the Vril Society was a secret society in Germany. They were focused on what you might call hidden learning or occult learning. And she particularly was allegedly in contact with a group of extraterrestrials from a star system named Aldebaran. And supposedly she would have these contacts, and they were like telepathic, and she would scribble down this information she would get from them really quickly. And supposedly the information she got was the basis for later discoveries in levitation that the Nazis allegedly made in the late 20s, early 30s, where they developed this device called the Die Glocke or the bell, and was basically a UFO that would, you know, levitate. It would rise vertically, and it was electromagnetic technology. Okay, and supposedly this woman named Maria Orsic got this information, and she was part of the Vril Society, which was a whole series of mediums in Germany that they would never cut their hair. And so this guy, William Tompkins, now 90 years old, allegedly worked for TRW, Boeing, and several other agencies, is now one of the things he said in passing was that the quote unquote meetings with Semyase that Billy had were really this Maria Orsic. And, I think these are just PSYOP operations. I think our government, the three letter agencies, mind control these people. I don't think they know they're giving disinformation, but they have some way to do this, and they send these people out, and they'll mix real information with false information.
That's called a bait and switch, I think, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think what it does, it attacks people's morale. It causes confusion, and I had a really interesting. Boy, I'm going off on a huge tangent now. Sorry about this. Um, Another guy I interviewed this week. His name is Douglas Dietrich, and very interesting guy, military historian that used to be on Coast to Coast. I remember hearing him on Coast to Coast 4 or 5 years ago, and he used to come out with stuff. I mean, he worked when the documents would come in, and these were like top secret documents that had to be destroyed. So what he would do is he would read them and then destroy them. So even notes being covered, fascinating to listen to. And he was telling me that a lot of these talk shows, like Coast to Coast, uh, they'll get bought by corporations like Clear Channel, which are really being controlled by the NSA. And what happens is once they get popular and they start getting out enough real information, because they always put out a lot of fake stuff too, but once they get at the point where they're putting out too much real information, these people from the NSA will come in and buy the controlling stocks, and then they'll start getting guests that are just, I mean, pablum, just nothing. So that's what Coast to Coast has become. It's just, nothing. You just listen to it and it's like you're in preschool or watching mainstream media or something. But it never used to be that way. It used to be really interesting stuff. So anyway, that's one thing that Douglas Dietrich was telling me. I have a really good show. You can listen to it. I don't know. Did you listen to that, Nate? You probably haven't listened to that, have you?
No, I haven't listened to your show in about 2 weeks. So
Okay.
if it's been looking there, I haven't heard it.
You've been very busy, right?
Yeah, actually, it's just a lot of running around for me. But I have been still studying when I have a chance my material, and then putting it into practical use with a lot of different people.
Well, I tell you what, I this morning was going over a section in The Way to Live. It's on page 258. By the way, has Lilly gotten the Way to Live book yet? Or is she interested in this stuff? Or
Yeah, I have it, and I'm reading it as well.
it's and Nate can tell you this. I mean, when you read this stuff, you'll, at least what happens with me, you go through the whole book and you get, like, I don't know, some small percentage of the actual material that's there, and then you go through it again and get the next little bit group. But what I was reading, which I was stunned by, it says to really live means learning, but learning means to search for the truth, to find it, and to recognize and follow it. But living according to the truth means letting go of all anxiety. And that, jumped off the page at me, because I think I must be holding on to anxiety about some things, and I don't even know exactly what they are. But I think anytime we have striving, there's the potentiality for some, what's the right word I'm looking for? Not suffering, but adversity. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if that is interesting to you guys or not, but that was very. I'm gonna have to take this apart backwards and forwards and try to understand.
Yeah, I think when I listen to you and stuff, one of the things, and you came out of your mouth before, is you don't really like to engage in strong discourse.
Yeah.
And all the years I've been listening to you, I've only heard you once kind of get kind of moody at one of your guests.
Yeah, that's very true. So continue. That's very interesting.
So when you're talking about your anxiety and stuff, I think searching there and figuring out why that is. I mean, you're totally equal with everybody, but maybe there's a fear of that you'll be wrong, or you'll misstate information,
Oh,
or that you don't want to step on somebody else's toes. And really,
that's really interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, in the field we're in too, I think in the IT industry, when you're a programmer, you're constantly facing unknowns, which on the one hand is very interesting, but it's also, and I don't know if you feel this too, it wears on you a little bit. Do you ever feel that?
You mean overwhelmed?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Or yeah, you gotta have a place for that stuff. You just and I've learned to kind of just okay, learn the keywords, learn the buzzwords, and slowly flesh those out.
yeah.
Have
It's all a matter of taking things step by step. I've got a, I have got, have you, Nate, have you read any of Love Letter 27? Sounds so corny. I hate that title.
it's cool. No, I have read. I think I read some parts off your website.
It's such a good, I mean, it's like this one section that I really, what I do sometimes with the Meier information is I memorize. If something is really important to me, it really strikes me, I'll memorize it. And I think you get the greatest understanding, and this is, this goes into some deep stuff about how the mind learns and everything. But I think I get the biggest understanding in just being able to recall it and just say it out loud. And then sometimes I'll break it down into the individual words and then try to define the individual words. But anyway, this one passage, it starts out, and this is part of the spiritual teachings, Lily, that, we who are not FIGU members really don't get the whole spiritual teachings. And Nate, you probably know that, don't you?
Yeah.
But they open this up, and it's so profound. And if I can remember this first line, it says something like, love is the highest principle in all creation, and through it, everything exists in absolute logic. Now, let's so what I'm in the process of doing mentally is trying to break this down so I can at least figure out why that's so profound to me. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Nate, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. Like you'll read something in the Meier information and it's so profound for you, it blows you away, leaves you almost speechless. And then I have to go back and try to think, gosh, what is this? And levels of understanding, like maybe how he talks the spirit form as being the inner eye or the inner personality. I think it just resonates real deeply with the inner eye, and then my personality in this lifetime per se has to kind of go and sort it all out. You know what I'm saying? Does that make any sense to you?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm so
I,
glad to hear you say that because you're one of the few people in the world that would say that. Go ahead, continue.
yeah, I think what really struck me, something to that effect, is something that I've read like probably now over 100 times. Is, in the Way to Live, verse 60, or and it talks about love there.
Really? Do you remember what page?
Page it would be from page 58, 56, starting on 56, and it's quite a long one.
Oh yeah.
But there is. Let me see if I can find. Uh, here's. I'll just read this verbatim. It's a small paragraph. Um, True love does not allow itself to be possessed. Therefore, the love also does not possess, because it is the purest divine spiritual perception, and it is sufficient in itself. So, I want to know what that means.
Um, love is an okay. I'm looking at this, and tell me if what you just read is after this or before it. It says, "Love is not located in the heart, and it is not the power of a god. Rather, it is the purest, fine spiritual perception of the spirit and of the consciousness of the human being, who creates it in himself/herself by means of a fine spiritual perception." So that's in the second to last paragraph.
My paragraph is right above that one.
Oh, that's what I didn't highlight. Now, this is interesting. Just, isn't that interesting? True love does not allow itself to be possessed. You know, when you read that, the first thing I thought of were my cats. I know that may sound stupid if you're not a cat person, but cats do not want to be possessed, but I'll continue. The true love does not allow itself to be possessed. Therefore, the love also does not possess. It's the purest fine spiritual itself. Wow. And this brings up this other line of reasoning and line of thinking that what I was telling you guys about, which I think I read to you guys. To really live means learning. Did I read that to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, it goes on and talks about that that how does this go? So that understanding of the becoming and the passing arises, the truth of the death is recognized as the passing of one level of existence for the becoming in the other one. So the two relationship there, I would say, is the that true love does not possess because it knows, right, that the material existence is temporary. As much as we hate to think about it, it's temporary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This also brings to mind something that I've also read. True love is effective love.
Yeah.
That's something I memorized. So keep it in mind.
As opposed to affective love, romantic love, right?
Right.
Which is also by the Meier material called, how does he put that? Not artificial love. Maybe, does he call that artificial love?
I've word transient or transient. I'm assuming, temporary.
Hmm. You know, we've gotten like, extremely profound today. Very heavy. These thoughts are very heavy. Um, and that goes back to, what I was saying. Love is the highest principle in all creation, and through it, everything exists in absolute logic. Love is like, I don't know, I know you know this, Nate, is a it's what's called a creational natural law, and it says it's the highest principle. You could say also it's the most important idea, and it says through, and it's very interesting that it picks the word through, because this universal intelligence, through its love, everything came into existence, and through an absolute logic, meaning that there was no question. It's a finality. I have notes on this, and I'm going to try to find them. So feel free
Oh,
to
okay.
chat away. I got to look up at these notes. Uh,
So, hey, Lily,
Yeah.
how did you get into the case?
Uh, Through you, actually.
Well, what do you think about it so far? I mean, what appealed to you?
Everything. For instance, the topic that you guys are talking about right now, true love. For me, it's just redefining everything that I known in the past.
Gosh.
So just everything that I knew is completely being distortion from just love itself. Just like you guys were saying, love, or the way we portray love before is that it's purely between a relationship, right? Man and a woman, and maybe
Mhm.
family members. But
Yeah.
reading the material, I find that there's more than that, way more than that. And not only that, but it's so difficult to understand. So it's almost like reprogramming what I've known my entire life. So it's, I think that's been the hardest, yet the most rewarding thing I've find myself in this case so far.
It's very interesting that you say that, and maybe Nate has had the same experience. But when I started really scratching, the surface on this case, I had the same experience. I realized everything I thought I knew was wrong, which is really has had an emotional impact on me, and it stunned me, and I almost had to step back away from the information a little bit for just a little while and go back and take in just little bits of it at a time. Nate, did you experience anything like that?
Yeah, I think what really came to my mind was really dealing with I know or I don't. And so when they were talking about Billy's time travel experience, this is when I had the most revulsion to the
Yeah,
case.
I can understand that, and I still don't know what to think about all that. Um, if it's true that you can travel in time, then it would mean that everything has existed still exists, which and that there's really only an eternal now, whatever that means. And you know what else? Another thing about the case that stunned me that I still try to wrap my mind around is these other space-time configurations. I don't like a universe that complicated, personally. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but like, well, let me continue to read this. It says, "Love is the highest principle of creation, and through it, everything exists in absolute logic. The love of creation is everywhere, because without it, nothing at all would be able to exist. The individual should therefore be aware that he exists only through the love of creation, and that he carries this love also within himself. Creation created everything in love and logic, and put the same love in all its creatures, so that life itself is love." So profound, I'll read that for the rest of my life and ponder it. So that's the Meier material.
And how does that play in with free will? Do you?
How does that play in with free will? Wow. Elaborate on your question, can you?
The last thing you said had to do with putting love into all its creatures and stuff, and love being the guide, pretty much.
You
I
bro-
understand that correctly.
you broke up a little bit. Repeat that.
Um, okay. What was I saying? Love being put into all creatures and stuff, and being the guide, which you just
It's
read.
it's interesting that you that was a good question, because I think the later passages will, will it says after, even if living in this world often seems to consist only of conflict and drudgery, this fact does not change. The love of creation is everywhere, because without it, nothing at all would be able to exist. The individual should therefore be aware that he exists only through the love of creation, and that he carries this love also within himself. And this is another passage that I've memorized that I say to myself all the time. All of nature in its indescribable splendor is nothing but the love of creation, which is expressed visibly. Its laws are so wonderfully arranged that people everywhere come up against its radiating love. Love will continuously be the purpose of all existence, all timely in its given logic. Now, here's gets to your question. Each smallest plant, each ever so tiny animal was created in love by creation. Each creation existed according to the same law of love. All life is in the absolute perfection which it should be through the love of creation, except for humans. Now, this gets to your question. Every life form lives exactly by creation's plan. So all the plants, all the animals live exactly according to creation's plan. It's only the human, and it goes on to say this, only humans have turned away from love and must now learn again what true love is. And it goes on to say the infinite love of creation connects all life because in all life this love lies hidden. So every life form lives exactly like creation's plan except for humans. So does that mean that we are the only life form that really has free will in that sense?
Yeah, it sounds a lot like it,
It does, doesn't it?
and it's it almost seems that humans are backwards in this matter.
Yeah, we are. And I think that's why we're so attracted to animals, to kittens and puppies, because that love of creation is ingrained within them. It's what they are. Whereas human beings, we come out of the womb crying and screaming and yelling, right? So, yeah, I tell you, the material itself is almost overwhelming. How long have you been looking at this, Lily?
Let's see, since May. So I
Wow.
guess it's one of the newest members somehow.
Let
So,
me.
mhm.
I'm going to go ahead, continue. I'm going to throw something in the chat, some links
Okay.
that might help. Uh, I mean, you sound like you've come a long way in since May.
I think it's because I've been looking for it for pretty much my entire life. So I knew there was something out there, just didn't know what it was. And at the beginning, it hit me pretty hard. Some things hit me pretty hard. Like one of the things that I think it was the hardest for me was the fact that when we reincarnate, we don't get in touch pretty much with anybody that we knew before.
Isn't that
So
hard? That's a hard truth, isn't it?
yeah. So somehow that was tough for me to think that I'm not going to be able to see or have the same type of
Well,
relationship. Go ahead.
you you're correct, but now Nate, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, isn't it possible that when you reincarnate, you may come in association with people that you knew from previous lives, but you may not recognize them whatsoever. It done, isn't some of the people in the Figu, haven't they in some way been associated? Do you remember any of that, Nate? I just,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think we can talk a little bit about destiny. What
Okay.
what destiny is. So the way the material describes destiny is that it is a current agreement on a future incarnation. So, for example, the material talks about this thing called the Codex, and the Codex was basically all of these people of old who screwed everything up had agreed to start repairing the damage at this time that they would come back and meet. And that's what the material describes. So they've all met each other in the past in some way or form or another, and they incarnated here. Another interesting thing was Billy's ex-wife, Penelope. She and two other ladies always meet in every lifetime.
Really?
Yeah.
Now you said Penelope wasn't. Was that the woman that he went through the desert with that died?
No, I thought I said Penelope. Uh, there was a lot of tragedy early on uh, in Billy's life and his young adult life.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one you're referring to was the one who was bitten by the snake near the oasis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know her name.
Are you? Oh, are you thinking of Calliope?
Okay. Yeah, I screwed it up.
No,
Okay.
no, no. That's okay. But um, no.
Taking
Say
note.
that again. You're saying Calliope has agreed somehow to meet with these other women, and they do meet.
Uh-huh. And the other women are part of this. And Calliope, she'll be coming back to the group in her next incarnation as well.
You've got to be kidding me. How strange is that? You know, that's my material. Does it strike you as strange? It strikes me as strange, man, all the time.
I think I think per lifetime, each ego has a certain capacity for wisdom and learning and stuff. And when you have people who have their own individual egos, each one is limited in certain ways, and can um, make an errant mistake. For example, I don't know if you remember this, but in the contact notes, it was Quetzal and Billy were at each other's
Oh,
throats,
I remember
and
that. Yeah. They had a
and they were
horrible argument, didn't they?
yeah, and they both wanted the same thing, but something got in, and Ptah goes into when he was acting as a third party mediator between the two to try to help the situation. He goes into a little bit of explanation of actually what was going on. That if he wasn't there, they would have both parted ways, never saw each other again, but still worked towards the mission.
Wow. And wasn't it something, I think the disagreement, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that Billy has this obsession with working outside and he loves to work outside. And I think Quetzal was saying, hey man, you've got to stop working outside all the time and get focused on your writings. Was it something like that?
Yeah, it may have been that. I don't know the context,
You
but
know
I do
what's
remember it.
also strange to me about this relationship between Figu and these extraterrestrials is that these, when the Plarian come in, they're very dogmatic. In other words, you will do this at this time, and you know, which
Yeah,
always,
I think they're you know your other guest who's a passive member of FIGO from Canada,
oh yeah, Daniel.
Daniel. Yeah. When I hear him speak a little bit of the gosh, just lost my train of thought. But when you say they're dogmatic, he had mentioned that um, they are like we're playing chess, and they're light years ahead on the board, and they
Right.
know the next. They know the next. Especially at this stage when they're allowed to readjust the way they were viewing us. Um, Earlier on in the mission, they really didn't understand the Earth human beings, and that not only do we lie to others, we actually lie to ourselves.
Right. Exactly. And if they're 4 or 5 moves ahead, that would
And of
be,
course, they're going to be dogmatic,
yeah, yeah,
especially because we're here and we're like, "What are you talking about?"
yeah. It's how's the Talmud now? The Talmud's out now, right?
Yeah. Um, Actually, Lily and I were reading through it. Lily, you want to talk about the Talmud?
Um, Go ahead and start. I'll jump in.
Well, it's a book. Go ahead.
That was
So,
profound, Nate. Thank you for that wisdom.
That's why I follow everything you say.
Yeah.
Talmud, it recently got published. It's really awesome. Um, the beginning of Talmud is great in that it talks about the genesis of the five major world religions, and it goes into the background of each religion and talks about the obvious flaws just in the naming. And so that is really a good starting point. I think if people do begin to read this, they're going to have to get past the first few chapters because it seems almost redundant. But I think it's a measure of getting the information exactly as it's supposed to be to you. Um, so they do repeat themselves a lot, especially in the beginning. However, there is some one of the things that I actually found really awesome was the spiritual teachings between Billy and the discussion. They were talking about belief, and some of you out there that are listening may know that that's one of my ends in disciple
Um,
all type.
Nate, you're breaking up a little bit again here. I lost you when you said something about obvious flaws.
Obvious flaws of all the religions, and just in their naming, just starting off with the naming of each religion. For example, Islam. They don't worship Islam. They worship Allah. So it says that they should be called Allahists. You know.
Oh, okay. 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 And then you broke up a little bit on the spiritual teachings there.
So in the very beginning of the Talmud Emmanuel, Ta and Billy are having a conversation where Billy explains how the human being can actually free him or herself from religion or the belief of religion.
Hmm.
And I think we've talked about this before, but one thing we don't want to do is proselytize,
Right.
because this takes the human being and puts them in a defensive position. So instead of questioning their logic line, they're defending their logic line, which is the wrong energy, and you'll never get changed that way.
You know, it's very interesting. I had a Jehovah Witness who had come to my house, and I'm very open to these people, and I will engage them and talk to them about the Bible. And I have many, many good questions about the Bible that almost no religions have a good answer for. So they sent their person out here who was kind of the beginner, and she left with whoa, she was blown away. So then she brought back her next person up in the chain of commands for the Jehovah Witnesses. And me and him had a fascinating conversation on my back porch, and I brought up everything, extraterrestrials in the Old Testament and da 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 da, and all the questions of, Cain and Abel, and where did Cain's wife come from, and how and why was Cain building a city if there were only 3 people on the earth, and and Cain, his wife either had to be his sister or his niece. I mean, and that doesn't make sense. And we went on and on and on. And the guy he called me and wanted to come back and talk some more, but I never called him back. I'm so busy. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, I can talk to people. There are going to be some real strong questions about religion. I have one guest who's really good. He's a lawyer, and he knows a whole lot about the Bible and ancient languages, and he agrees with me 100% that there was no letter J in the ancient world, and the people that we call Jesus and James and John and Job, etc., they didn't have those names even as late as 1500 years ago, or 1500s. Right around 1550, Gian Giorgio Terracino invented the letter J, and then they went back and renamed all these people's names, and it's just incredible to me that there are so many gaps in the information in religion, and yet religion has the ability somehow of, you just start to look over these things. For example, the story I was just talking about, Cain, Abel, and Adam and Eve, and Cain kills Abel. There's three people on the earth, and then the next chapter, Cain is taking a wife and he's building a city for who we don't know, and how did he even know things like a city would even exist, and where did his wife come from? So there's this gigantic hole in the story that you can drive a semi truck through, but yet people in religion, they just don't question. And I was in religion too, and I often wondered about that, but I didn't really, you just kind of live with it. And then, for example, and not to, I know I'm rambling here, but for example, wipe out the Midianites and they kill all the men, and then they come back, and Moses is enraged and says, you got to kill all the women and the children, but you can keep the virgins for yourself. And that was the hardest thing for the Jehovah Witness guy. I mean, he's looking at this blinking, and I'm like, it's right there. Why are they keeping the virgins for themselves? And are you sure Jehovah is the creator of the universe? So I have no problem with bringing up these inconsistencies. I invite the Jehovah Witness to come over anytime. So, but have you pondered these things, Nate?
Absolutely. I mean, logic is formed in a sense through trial and error, but you have to be able to see your error. However, if you put belief in the way, it masks your error with usually a feeling of righteousness.
Oh, you were breaking up again. So you were saying that logic requires trial and error, and you have to be able to see the error?
Yeah, and that a belief will sometimes mask the error
Uh,
in a form of indifference, or give you a feeling to say, "Oh, you're right. You're feeling right, so you must be right."
that's very
Um,
profound.
and then with the Jehovah's Witnesses, I thought you might. I was just seeing how far you went into the information with them. If you talked about Jehovah's name was Hen, and the Decalogue versus the Decalogue, and how he passed it down as 12 commandments to Moses, and that the Moses's people changed it to 10 commandments and completely wiped out most of the meaning of it.
No, I didn't. That would have been a great thing to say. Do you remember what two commands were taken out?
I would say probably this. There's like four commandments that were probably taken out. Two new ones were added.
Oh, interesting. It was so interesting. I was talking to Brian Forrester, um, who is. Have you ever heard of him, Nate?
I think I might have heard him on your show before, if that was possible. The name
Okay.
sounds kind of.
He he's really dedicated his whole life to studying ancient sites and ancient civilizations, and it's very, very interesting to get his perspective, particularly on these ancient structures and what it would take to really build them. Um, it, you know, I think it would be very good for Brian to talk to some of the Jehovah's Witnesses and some of the people in religion, if nothing else. Um, and it's quite unfortunate because I think one of the things that religion does is it tends to create catch-all answers, um, that everything that's an anomaly, everything that's unknown gets thrown into these catch-alls.
Of course, it's God works in mysterious ways. Don't you know that, Mark?
Yeah, he sure does. Well, that explains everything. Then I'm just
Why even have a conversation? That's what I'm saying.
that explains it all. So the uh, the there's a term. Have you heard of the term Nephilim?
Yes. I think actually it might be mentioned in the TJ, and that was just a another name for
Talmud.
the. Go ahead, Lil.
No, nothing. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Another name for the celestial suns, which are just extraterrestrials
Right.
that were under the Ishwish, that who was or is, I don't know. I think is the father of the three human species on this planet. That would be the red, the white, and the brown races.
I've got to get to Talmud. I've got to get it. I've got to get it. Does Mike Cohorn have any more left?
He sold out last time, but I think Lily may have some information on that.
Yeah, I believe he's out of them, but he's ordering more.
Okay. Very, very good. I probably talked too much. Um, I love touching base. It's been ages and ages. I love touching base with you, and it's very good to meet you, Lily. And
Likewise.
you're really getting huge. I mean, I can't imagine what it must feel like from your end, but it sounds like you're absolutely absorbing a lot of this too.
Yeah, I love it. I'm good.
That's amazing. You know, it's amazing. It's overwhelming. One of the things I was reading lately from the Might of Thoughts is about how we have these. Have you looked at the Might of Thoughts yet, Lily?
I'm reading actually right now that book.
Oh my God, you're reading both?
I am reading everything depending on how I feel that day. I go back and forth between books.
Amazing. I was reading in the Might of Thoughts how it talks about our um, we have pathways formed in our brain related to, I think they call it habitual thinking,
Mm.
and that habitual thinking can manifest as um, thoughts that run out of control and repeat over and over and over again. And I that was like last weekend. That was the thing that I was really focused on, trying to study that. And it also it talks about health in our thinking. And I'll just read this one little section here. It says on page 150, the body, which has a gentle and plastic instrument, immediately reacts to the kinds of thoughts which the human being tends and nurtures. This is the reason why the human being should not allow habitual thinking to take the upper hand too much. As long as the human being nurtures unclean, pessimistic, wrong, sick, bad, and negative thoughts, his or her feelings, which in turn correspondingly form from the psyche, also influence the body and the life. So somehow I got onto this study of these neuropathways, and I think our old habits, they're hard to break, and the new habits are hard to form because the behavioral patterns we repeat are imprinted on our neural pathways. And there are tiny gaps in these pathways or connections in our brain called synapses. And for us to learn something new, the electrical signal has to jump across this gap called the synapse to continue this journey. So if we have these bad habits of thinking, we're used to jumping these synapses. And it's almost like there's this whole automatic thing that takes place. You know, like there are certain things that trigger us, you know, like anger or anxiety or whatever, these wrong behavior pathways. They're like hardwired into our brain. Have you ever experienced any of that, Nate?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have a story. I have a story. about that just recently, actually. So when I was younger, I had some very bad habits, and at this time, I didn't know what a psyche was. You know, if I felt bad, then the body felt bad. If the body felt bad, then I felt bad. It wasn't always like that. However, that's how I kind of like masked what was going on in my experience. Um, and so what happened is I would be a young adult, and most of my time was spent on video games and in a small room. If I wasn't at work, this is what I was doing, and
Wow.
it was very very unhealthy. But I didn't look at it like that. I just felt bad. I'm like, what do I feel bad? Why do I feel bad? So I was looking around for a reason to make me feel bad, or an excuse, I would say, or inability to recognize my immediate environment was actually causing this. Um, so I developed a milk allergy, a dairy allergy. When I would have dairy, I would be feeling bad, feeling sick, would develop these rashes and all this other stuff. And I had convinced myself over the past, I would say, 15 years plus, that I had this dairy allergy. So I'd kind of shy away from dairy and go, oh, this is causing me problems. This was that. And I even may have mentioned it on your show in the past, but just recently, within the past 4 months, actually, at the request of Lilly, that I get some blood work done. Um, I got blood work done, and I have no allergies.
Wow.
So now I had to go like, okay, what was happening? Started taking apart my history, my building, my excuse making, and why I couldn't see the truth of the matter. You know,
Did you hear me and Daniel talk about video games?
no, but I was going right into the whole dangerous media thing right there.
Oh, you haven't got to that part yet?
Oh no, no, it's all about. I was just saying because I was addicted to video games. I was addicted to that way of life, and
I was too.
just like any.
I was too. Continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, carry on.
Oh,
So,
no, no, no. I just was letting you know that I experienced the same thing. And I had
well,
to,
what was yours like?
oh my God, I loved it. I mean, I totally, and I would lose all track of time and I'd play all night and you wake up the next day and feel like crap. And I remember I played all night and it was like Christmas, and I woke up like the next day, okay, I have to stop cold turkey. Threw away the boxes, uninstalled the stuff on my computer, and never went back. But yeah, I was just completely addicted, and I'm sure I had developed all these synapses in my brain that were completely useless and a lot of fun, but didn't accomplish a damn thing.
That's so true.
Isn't that true? I mean,
Now you try to convince the young generation of that. I think this experience puts us in a very unique position with this young generation, and to understand the dangers, because we've been there. Just
it'll
kind of like a recovering drug addict, right?
yeah, I'm telling you, it's not drugs, but it might as well be. It's it's just as dangerous in some respects as a lot of the drugs. Did you we've been talking 55 minutes, and I really appreciate touching base with you guys. And Lily, keep up the good work. I mean, I'm so impressed. Um,
Thank you.
you're doing great, and it's just amazing. And I wish I was. I guess I'm going to have to buckle down and fly out to Munns Park again before too long.
Well, I think we're going to bring this up at the next meeting, but we'd like to do like a, a 2 day event at least, or something like that, so people just don't fly out for one day.
Mhm.
Because I know a lot of other people want to come out, but it seems kind of like a lot to do in just
Hmm.
one day.
Yeah. Um, are you are the meetings pretty much the same size? Seven or
Um,
seven or eight people, something like that.
Yeah, they fluctuate. I think we had a pretty big meeting.
Last one was more than 15.
Really?
Mhm.
Now, what are you guys studying right now?
At the meeting or here?
At the meeting.
Um, well, there's this lady named Marcy that was talking about astrology and from her point of view and how she learned it. Um, there was Midge. She was there and she was talking about the copper pyramid and her introduction to Billy and some of her history there.
Hmm.
And there was one more, um, a prepper. Um, I think his name is Al,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a prepper backpack, and he started taking apart. It was more of a practical spirit teaching, um,
Hmm.
meeting. I don't think we read anything. Lily, did we?
No, not last time. We didn't have enough time.
How long are the meetings? Are they still, what, a couple hours or?
Yeah, they do. They still run the 4 hour.
Yeah, 4 hours goes pretty fast sometimes, doesn't it?
Oh yeah,
And is Michael Horn still coming?
yeah. He's still there. He's still spry as ever.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe I'll suck it up and head out to Arizona again one of these days. Although there's a group here in Ohio that's only a couple hours away. I'm not so sure it'd be the same. I'll have to try it sometime. Any closing thoughts, guys?
Keep up the good work.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me hit the save button here.
Get the Talmud. You're gonna